Okay, so let's see here. At the beginning of class, which again, I'm having problems with the Camtasia recordings tonight, so I'm going to try to recover them. I think the files are there. I always have to go. There have been like once a year I need to do some surgery. Something gets messed up, so I don't know what's going on, but I'll try my best to fix it. So at the beginning of class, we saw we did some more TDD. We did some unit testing. And we saw continuous integration and how all of that worked. And then we talked about some nuts and bolts of your assignments, how to write, the expectations for testing and documentation and submitting. Then we saw an introduction to Project 2. Now, I want to go back to writing some code, but I want to focus on doing test-driven development for the main method. So, the main method is your user interface for the project, for the code, actually. And it, the way the command line works is that you run the command line program. It you provide it some command line, some options on the command line, some arguments on the command line. They get passed to the main method. Your main method does stuff with it, prints the standard out, prints the standard error, and then exits by issuing an exit code. And so if everything's okay, it issues an exit code of 0. If it's not okay, it has a non-zero exit code. And you've probably learned about Java's mechanisms for doing that. For you look at the main method, and the main has has args that are passed in, so you can work with that. And you know about standard error and standard out, and you've probably seen system.exit before. And okay, this is all good stuff. But when it comes to testing your main, that can be a little tricky because if your main does things like writes the system.out, how in a unit test are you going to access system.out? Or if your main method exits and you want to make sure that if an error occurs, it exits with a non-zero error code, your exit, your calling system.exit exits the virtual machine. And so if you call that from a test, it's going to exit from the test, right? That's not exactly what you want to do. And so in order to accommodate this, I wrote a framework that will let you run your main method and have the main method do the things that main methods do, like write to standard error and call system.exit without blowing up your program. And so those kinds of tests that are more than just code, when you're talking about interacting with things outside the code, are called integration tests. So the whole idea is that you are testing the integration of your code with something else. Now, integration tests, can be like, oh, maybe you're interacting with a database, and so when you run before you run your integration test. Sorry, one more thing. Integration tests are another distinction between integration tests and unit tests are that integration tests are expected to take longer to run and require more setup and teardown than unit tests, right? Unit tests are meant to run in like milliseconds. They're super, super fast, and so you write a whole bunch of them. That is a lot of your code. But you need to make sure that when your code runs in sort of closer to a real environment, that it behaves as expected there also. So with integration tests, there's usually some more setup and teardown. We'll see this for real when we learn about the web application. When we start looking at Project 5, Project 5, which is the web application. There, we'll be writing integration tests that actually will spin up a web server, deploy your web application to it, and the tests can interact with that web application, can call the REST APIs, can verify that everything's all right, and then once tests are over, everything gets shut down. We'll get to there in a few more weeks, but for today, what we're going to be looking at is this framework for interacting with main methods. So I wrote a class called Invoke Main Test Case. And what this thing is it provides some helper methods for working with main. So for instance, here I have a test, a JUnit test, right? We're still using JUnit, so we have at test, we're using hamcrest, we're using assert that, all that good stuff. That basically says, listen, when you invoke main with no arguments, that it returns an exit code of 1. This is like a very reasonable thing that you want to test, right? And so the way you do this is the following. The invoke main method takes a couple of arguments. It's probably hard to see. The first argument is the class whose main method that you want to invoke. Some of you might have encountered this in the cones already. There is this concept in Java called reflection, and you can get a class, an object that represents the class of another object, by saying the name of the class dot class. There's a whole lecture on it that you'll watch in a couple of weeks. So the first thing that you send to invoke main is the name of the class, and then it has an optional number of arguments, of command line arguments, that you can will then be sent to the main method. Here we don't have any because the test is saying, hey, listen, what's invoked with 0 arguments against an exit code of 1. So you can call invoke main to say, hey, run the main method of this class. And that goes off and runs it in this magical little sandbox that does things like the following. It captures whatever you write to standard out and standard error and makes them available in a string. And it also captures the exit code. So you can call, your code can call system.exit, but doesn't really exit the VM. Instead, it captures what the exit code was and keeps track of it in this object called result. Called result. And then you can interrogate result to get information about it related to the execution of the main method. So for instance, we want to say, hey, listen, we've run main with no arguments. We want to assert that the exit code that was returned by running main is equal to 1. That's what this does. Similarly, we want to say, hey, listen, invoking main with no arguments prints missing arguments to standard error. So we invoke main again with our student class and run the main method of student with no arguments. And then we assert that getting the text that was written to standard error contains missing command line arguments. And so then when we run these two, no tests found. No tests found because, this is the student. I found that sometimes, this is recently broken with IntelliJ, you need to clean your Maven project in order to get the integration tests to work. And then it'll rebuild some stuff. I think it's trying to be smart about, there you go, how things are compiled. Great. So it ran all the tests. And why these tests passed? Well, let's go look at the let's go look at our main method. And what does it do? It prints missing command line arguments to standard error and does a systemexit.1. So this is like doing real stuff. So now we've got this this framework that allows us to write tests for our main method, and our main method doesn't need to do anything tricky. It can just do what it expects to do, like write to standard error and standard out. So now that we've got that, what are some of the test cases for our main method? We've already implemented our business logic in the student class, and we have a whole bunch of unit tests that verify that, so I'm feeling pretty good about the quality of that. What do we need to test about our main method? What is unique? It will print things. Many things. No. Actually, maybe we should start kind of what we did with the unit test. What is the ultimate test for the main method? The ultimate test. Like, what is the thing that we need, like the big thing that we need to get working?
I think of happy path. I think of running it with valid arguments and getting a valid result.
Sure.
Now, there's going to be a lot of intermediate stuff where we have errors, and we have input or no input or whatever, and all of that needs to be tested for as well. But the ultimate thing that we're looking for is the happy path.
All right, so what's the happy path? I think the happy path is kind of here in the assignment, right? It's the whole Dave one. So when we run the program with this input, we get this. So let's write that test. So let's see here. Run main with Dave student. So we'll say invoke main. We want our student class. Nope, student class. And the arguments are as follows. I'm just going to copy all this. Let's see here. So the first argument is going to be Dave. The second one is going to be male. The second one is going to be 3.64. Remember, these are all strings. algorithms, operating systems, and Java. So let's see here. So when I run that, so I'll call it main. So I want to assert that, first of all, that main.get exit code equal to 0, because it was valid. And I also want to assert that main.get text written to standard out contains string this guy right here. There's no new line, operating space systems. It's kind of hard to read. I'm going to try to get it all in one line. There you go. So I think that's the ultimate test, right? Getting all of this stuff right here. So weird. So now, of course, I try to run it. It's going to fail miserably because it's not implemented yet. But this sort of gives us, okay, this is where we want to end up. Okay. What is the first step that we want to take to get there?
So we already have no arguments.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try passing too few.
Okay. Invoking main with too few arguments. Prints error message and exits 1. So what do we want to? So what do we want for an argument? Just a name.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Student. And then let's see here. Contains string. What should the error message be?
Missing command line.
Missing command line arguments. And then it should have just an exit of 1. Okay. That's a good. That's a good test. All right. So let's run it. Oh. No. Well, okay. Wait a second. Well, it didn't fail. It's not very interesting. What if we made our error message a little bit more specific? So what if we said missing gender? Right? We've got the student. That's what's in the gender. Oh, okay. Okay, now we got to make it green. How do we make it green? What logic do we want here in our main to make it green?
Well, the gender is looking at gender.
Right, it's the second argument.
The second argument.
Yeah. Okay.
We define if there are at least.
Well, so let's see here. So if, I don't know, we're going to do args.length equals 0, then we'll have that one. Else, if args.length equals 1, then system.error.println, shoot, what was the name of it? Missing gender. Yeah, that works. Okay. Well, let's run our next test. Oh, actually, and this is probably not so good. How about invoking main without gender prints error message and exits 1. Okay. Now let's have invoking main without GPA. Student, the valid gender is other. Now missing GPA. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't run all the tests, but lived dangerously. It's all right. Make there right key combination. Yeah, missing GPA. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Missing GPA. Okay. What's next? Let's see here. With GPA, I can't remember. Was 0 classes valid or not? Sorry, what? It was. Okay. So what happens? What happens when with 0 classes? So let's see here. This is valid, right? It just prints out the student. And exits 0. Right, 'cause that's a valid student right there with a valid GPA.
So not without in that main instead of with.
Oh, thank you. With 0 classes. Good call. Okay. And so then this is not to standard out. This is standard. Sorry, standard error. This is standard out, and contains string. Oh, now we get this whole thing. You know what? It's taking 0 classes. I don't really care about the says stuff. We can get that later. So let's see here. This is student has a GPA of 1.23 and is taking 0 classes, period. Right, that's what we'd expect, right? Let's run that. Okay, didn't print anything. All right, nothing was printed to standard out. Fair enough. Okay, so let's go look at the main and what we need to do here. So okay, so if it's not that, oh, you know what? Okay, well now we're gonna need system exit on all of these. You know what? And now I want to refactor that, but I should probably get my test running first, and I'll go back and refactor that. Okay. Otherwise, I guess I want to create a new student. And let's see here. The name of the student is arg0. The classes is going to be empty. New hash set, should be a linked hash set. The GPA is going to be args2, and then the gender is going to be args. No, wait, sorry, args1, and the gender is going to be args2. Ugh. Okay, that's kind of hard to read. What doesn't it like? Let's see here. Oh, it's complaining about GPA. Oh, right, yeah, GPA is as a double, and all I've got is a string. How do I turn this string into a double? So what was that? Double dot. Oops. Double dot parse double. Not even told. Oh, that's helpful of it. Okay. Oops. Double GPA. Okay, so then it prints the student. Sorry, creates a student, and now we want to say system.out.println student.toString. And here we want to say system.exit 0. Oops. Exit 0. Right, because what we want to do, we want to create a new student, print it out, system.exit 0. Oh, what didn't it like? No, number format exception. No, I don't have the... Oh, this is a little confusing. Let's see here. arg0 is the name. Oh, the gender is arg1. I did have it right. And then the GPA is args2. Huh. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that the order of the arguments in the student doesn't match the order of arguments in the command line. Okay, and it passes now. Okay, this is good. So I did a red, green. Now I want to... Oh, actually, I want to go back and run all of my tests. It's been a little while since I've run all of my tests. Good. Now I want to refactor it a little bit because I see a lot of duplicate code here. So I want to turn this into a method, and I'm going to call this, it's going to be my message. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to say print error message and exit. What doesn't it like? No. Keep original signature. Replace. Replace. Nice. Okay, and now I'm going to inline this variable because I don't need it anymore. Okay, cool. Go back and run all my tests again. Yay, okay. So, okay, I'm going to commit because I got my code working. So let's see here. Started implementing tests for the main method. Okay, well, what's the next test case that we need to write?
There's no protection for entering the arguments in the wrong order, or if you don't enter a number for GPA.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, good ideas. Let's quick write them down before we forget. So, test arguments in the wrong order, and then we'll write it later. And then public void test invalid GPA. Okay, good. Okay, so what would be, what's the command line look like when the argument's in the wrong order? Right, so what should we put over here?
Other student and then the GPA.
Sorry, what?
You could go like other students and then the GPA. Just
Okay.
swap it.
Okay, and so yeah, so we have other here and we have student. What would we expect to have happen in this case?
You could get an exception.
Ah, okay. But remember, we're not, well, now, you don't want your main method to throw exceptions, right? Instead, how does the main method communicate with the user? Error code and system.error, system.exit. So then, I think we, can agree that, yep, we'll get a 1 exit code. But what do we want to be written to standard error or standard exit, standard output?
Probably invalid gender because it's hard to make sure that a name is an actual name.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, what constraints do we put on the name of the student? We don't, and that's fine, right? Now, that doesn't mean you should write, infinite number of test cases with like every, part of words. But maybe, hey, I want to, make sure that that my student's name can have emojis in it or whatever, So I don't know. Okay, so like invalid gender student. I should say unknown. Oh, interesting. So we're getting an illegal argument exception that's being thrown here. We don't want the illegal argument exception to be thrown from our main method. So what do we need to do?
Wrap it in a try catch.
Yeah, let's wrap it in a try catch. Let's see here. It's being thrown from the student constructor right there, which is our main right there. Okay. So let's see here. So I'm going to do this little trick here. We're splitting declaration and assignment. Then I'm going to put it in a try-catch block. Catch, legal argument exception. And then I want to say what? I want to say system.error.println get message. And then system. Oh, actually, no. What I want to say is this. I've got a method for that. I don't need to do that. I can say print error message and exit system.getMessage, and then it's underlining student. Why is it saying that? It's saying student variable student might not have been initialized. What does that mean?
It's not in the file.
That's right. So here we have a variable here. We use it down there. And if an exception is thrown, student won't be created, so student won't have a value. And the Java compiler is saying, I'm not going to compile that code because you might end up with a uninitialized reference, which you can't do in the Java language. So what should I do about that?
Put in assert student is not null with the after the catch.
I can. Oops.
That fails, so that was thrown in there.
Yeah, still got the
Remove the system out call inside the try block.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, okay, I can do that. Nice. Okay, yeah, that works. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. Let's give it a try. Cool. Okay, good. So now we handle an invalid gender. Ooh, invalid GPA. Okay, so what does this then look like? So, GPA. Okay, what do we expect to have happen here? Right, it'll issue some error message. What should that error message be? And actually, I don't like the names of these methods. And this isn't so much about arguments in the wrong order, is it? It's really about invalid gender. Or sorry, unknown gender. Unknown gender prints error message and exits 1. And so then this is basically invalid GPA. And so again, the error message is something like, I don't know, invalid GPA. GPA, bang, bang. Oh, interesting. So let's see here. What it got instead was it threw a number format exception saying for input string GPA, bang, bang. So what should we do to fix this?
Add the number format exception to the catch statement. As another catch clause.
Oh.
And then move the double GPA inside the
Yeah.
try.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, let's just do that. Don't need that. We can join that now, and now here, if we get a, I'll catch it first. Number format exception. Print error message. And exit with invalid GPA. args2, I'm going to call this GPA string. GPA string. Oops. Oh, nope. That won't go there. I need to move it up. GPA string. Oh, I ran the main method by mistake. I meant to run the test. Oh, that worked. Nice. Cool. Nice. Okay. Those are good test cases. That seemed to serve us well. Version control. Let's check them in. Test invalid. Oh, unknown. Unknown gender and invalid GPA on command line. What's next? Let's go check in with figure out where we are here with the ultimate test case. Okay, expected David's GPA 3.64 is taking 3 classes, but got David's GPA 3.64 is taking 0 classes. No, okay. Classes. We need classes next. Let's write a test for that. So we're not quite there yet on this one. Yeah, ignore that. What do we need for... What do we need for... What test do we need to write for this? One class? 2 classes? What do we need? Why would it matter? Hmm? Why would we need both? We do. Okay, I can see it doing that way. Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, so student with one, well, let me just say, one class prints out class name and exits 0. Let's see, that's all bogus stuff. Oh, actually, let's just start with me. This will probably be easier to build it up. Okay, algorithms. Not my favorite class in college. It's taking 1 class. Algorithms. Algorithms, period. 1, 2. Oops. He says this class is too much work. Okay, let's run it and see what we get. So here, David's GPA is taking 0 classes, ... That ... Dot's weird. I bet that's a bug. Huh. Okay, so 0 classes, so now we gotta fix that. So here in our main method, what are we gonna do? Let's see here. Instead of the linked hash set, this is going to be our classes. Yeah, hash set. Oops. We're going to add to classes. args3. Well, it passes. Is that the right thing to do?
So bar art is also if you don't have any classes, that's going to crash.
Oh yeah, right. So now, yeah, let's go back. Good call. So let's see. Yeah, if we go back and run the rest of our tests, things blow up all over the place because they get an array index out of bounds exception. So no, that doesn't seem right. Okay, what should we do then?
This test if there are classes with the args length.
Yeah. So let's see here. Yeah. So, I don't know. Do we want a whole nother? If arg's length is equal to 3, this doesn't seem right.
Greater than
Yeah, we know it's already greater than 2,
2. Greater than
right? Because the 2 is up here, so by default, everything we could put an assert there that args.length is greater than 2.
Let's see. Args dot length is equal to 2.
Up here, and then otherwise. So it's not 1, it's not 0, it's not 1, it's not 2, it's got to be greater than 2.
Greater.
Yeah, okay. So I don't necessarily need another if. Well, I don't know. So this is where I'm like, you know what? I know sort of ultimately where I want to go, right? I mean, ultimately, I just want to like iterate over the rest of the command line arguments. Geez, maybe I should just do that. It's like, because we're sort of just getting onesie twosie here. This is getting late. I'm getting a little tired. So it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm feeling okay about doing the following. So for in I equals 3, while I is 3, while I is less than args.length, I plus plus, and then just add args I. Manual array to collection copy. Meh. I don't know. Well, hey, listen, okay, K IntelliJ, show me what you got. Sure. Nah, still got a warning, doesn't it? Oh, because it's parameterized constructor call? Really? I don't know, right? To me, I look at that and it's like, what the hell's all that? I look at this and like, I understand what this is. So, thanks, but no thanks. No, there's no way for me to turn that off. No, anyway.
If I remember right, it implicitly adds a bunch of overhead too.
Sorry, what?
Well, when it does that, if I remember right, it adds like a bunch of overhead of like wrapping it in a list and the array, because the arrays class has to.
Oh, you mean when it makes the other call?
Yeah, when it generates that code.
Well, maybe. Because here's the thing. The Java virtual machine is really smart. And, it has a ton of optimization. And so if you're doing something and it really matters. So here's the thing. So sorry, in case you didn't hear. Let me go back and try this again. And why is that so awful? And he pointed out, it's like, look what you're doing here. You're taking this string array, you're creating a list around it, then you're making another sublist. This is probably like all this objects being allocated, and isn't that this is overhead? That is all true, but does it matter? When does it matter? Well, and this is the thing. So another thing that I struggle with is pre-optimization, right? Because it's like, oh yes, look, this is so awful, but if you're only going to do it once, we're talking, nanoseconds these days about whether or not that really matters. However, you do it inside a loop that's, that's issued a billion times. Yeah, it's going to matter. But then also, the Java virtual machine will say, wow, you're doing that loop a billion times. Maybe I should look to see if that's faster. And what it'll probably do is take a look at this, and it'll analyze and say, you know what? Damn it, this is the same thing as this for loop right here. That's much more memory efficient. I'll do that instead. It probably doesn't use that silly voice, but but that's the kind of thing it'll do. Yeah, you had an observation?
What if the classes were passing just as one string and you just split it up based on commas?
Yes, but that's not the syntax of the command line.
Oh,
Right? I mean, right. Well, that's not the program, right? So the program doesn't take a comma-separated list of values. And this is the thing about the user interface, right? It's like, well, that's what the definition is. So like in the assignment, right, you can't do that because when I run my test case, it's going to be about what's there in the project definition, not like, how you chose to implement it, right? So there's things that you do have leeway with, and there's things that you don't, and the things that you don't are usually on the periphery of the system, like the API or the user interface. But yeah, right, there might be other ways. And so then Yeah, that's a good question. As a designer, you need to weigh a designer and implementer. You need to weigh usability or giving the user something that the user expects versus efficiency, and versus resource efficiency. And because computers are faster than humans and are getting faster and faster, while humans aren't getting faster and faster. You optimize. So my rule of thumb is that you always start with optimizing for the human because that's the bottleneck. That's the slow thing. And it's not unless it's not until it really, really, really matters that you need to optimize for the computer. Anyway, this is good. Okay, so we got this. Let's try running our tests again and figure it out. Yeah. Okay, everything runs. Does everything run? Does my big test run? Nope, doesn't like it. What doesn't it like? Oh, I know what it is. I bet. Come on. Yeah, there's 2 spaces after the period. But when I copied it from the PDF, it didn't retain the 2 spaces. Little things like that. Yay, so that ran. Everything runs. Shoot, what did I just do? Oh, yeah. Handle names of classes on the command line. Oh, and by the way, let's just go check in with Travis here. Let me reload this in case I screwed it up. Oh, yep, it's been building. And here again, ran 10 minutes ago, probably run again. Yay, thank you, Travis. Doing all the heavy lifting for me behind the scenes. Okay. What's our next test case?
I just had a question.
Yeah.
So how did Java know to throw an illegal type exception with the unknown gender? Did you define what they had to be somewhere, or I just didn't know how it knew the exact error to throw?
I told it to, right? Here in the constructor, if you're not given a known gender, you throw an illegal argument exception with that unknown gender. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, here's an example of, another thing that maybe you've noticed. The interaction with the user comes at the periphery of the program in the main method. So in the guts of the program, in the business logic, you throw exceptions to convey things. You don't write to standard.error. Because if you're in a web application, standard.error is some log file on the server. The user's never going to see that. So instead, for your business logic, you need to use Java language concepts to convey things. So things like exceptions and return values, and that's really kind of all you get from a Java method. Whereas when it comes to the user, when you're interacting with them, you have different tools like writing to standard error and standard out, and then also system.exit. When you write your Android programs, you have all sorts of other ways of interacting with the user, right? Buttons and dialogues and pop-ups and all of that good stuff. Sounds, the phone vibrates. But internally, all the business logic there, you can only use the tools that you work with because you don't know the context in which your code is going to be used. And so you need to use things like exceptions because those can be handled irregardless of whether or not your code is being called from a REST API, from a command line, or from an Android application. So, what other test case? Oh, sorry. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So in this case, should we put like a throw statement on, or would you semantically put a throw statement on the student?
That's a good question. So should there be a javadoc? Well, should it throw? Now you don't have to because it's an unchecked exception. It's a runtime exception, and so be sure to watch that in the lectures. So the language, the compiler, doesn't require that you do that. The answer is yes. You probably should. You probably should document it. So at throws illegal argument exception. If the GPA is not between 0.0 and 4.0. Oh, look at that. It should be greater than, no, greater than, yeah, equal to works. Then also throws, oh, do we use the legal argument? Okay. If it, or if the gender is unknown. Yeah. So you should at least document it. And do you need to put it in the signature? Well, maybe you do. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably, if you're going to document it there, you might as well put it here. It's a good question. Oops, let's run all of the tests again. It shouldn't make a difference, right? It doesn't. Okay. Well, let's run our unit test. We haven't done that in a while. Make sure that still works. Hey, remember these? We just changed, actually, yeah, we just changed the domain code, so we should run those again. So everything seems to work. So let's check that in. So yeah, that's a good question. That the constructor might throw an illegal argument exception. Okay. What's our next test case?
Gender.
No, we have it for other. Do we need a valid gender? It's covered by the unit tests. And all the command line does is just passes it through. So there's really not any logic to validate, right? How would we write a failing test for it, right? It's a good point, right? Remember, the thing about a failing test is a failing test indicates code that hasn't been written yet. So if you can't write a failing test, maybe you've written all your code. I think we're done here. I think I would submit this. We've got, how much? I guess here's an interesting test. And actually, I don't know what's going to happen here exactly if I run p greater. Let's see what the code coverage is. And actually, I'm not certain that the integration test will be included in the code coverage. And if not, then I'll have to figure out what that means.
They weren't being included in those running.
They weren't? Yeah, damn. Well, it said it met it. But maybe that's just because there's not much code in the main. And maybe that's a good thing. Huh. I don't know. Grand experiment in software engineering. Here at Portland State. Cool. Okay, well, it says I've got enough code coverage. So I think I'd submit this. I think it's ready. So it's met the quality gates. Here again, I can't think of another failing test to write. It looks like all the code that has been written is sufficiently tested. So it's probably pretty good to go. Oh, one other thing. javadocs. Right. So let me show you something. So remember how I was talking about API documentation? I have those javadocs. I forgot to show you what they actually look like. So one of the parts about building a Maven project is, yeah, you can compile your source code. You can create, sorry, one more thing I wanted to show you, I guess. And that is, let's just do a Maven clean verify here, so that we've got our executable jar, right? Because so far, we've done everything in IntelliJ, which is nice, right? And it's fast, it's convenient, right close to the code. But I'm not going to test your code in IntelliJ. I'm going to test your code from the command line. So I'm going to build your Maven project, and then I'm going to run the jar file and send it some command line arguments. So this is student.jar. So I'm missing command line arguments. That's fine. And so now I'm going to run the. Actually, let's go back to the assignment. And I'll run this right here again. The ultimate test. There it is. Okay, Good. It's working. Phew. Okay then. So we're good to go. Okay. Right. One other thing that Maven can do is that it can build your Java docs and so much more. So there's a phase in Maven called site. And so this builds, well, a website based on your project. So, this is, for me, this is like a really great advantage of Maven, right? So, you play by Maven's rules and you get the benefits of Maven. So you've played by the rules in that, yeah, you've got this big POM XML, and yeah, your files are in certain directories and everything like that. You follow these conventions. And because you followed the conventions, then the Maven things just work the way the Maven things are expected to. So I have this Maven project configured to build this whole website for your project. It'll do things like build your Java docs. It'll analyze your code, all sorts of things. And so I will say Maven site stage. That makes all the HTML so you can open up in a browser very nicely. And then I'll open target site index.html. And here you go. I'll make it a little bigger so everybody can see it. Okay, so what it does is it takes information out of the pom.xml. So if you go and look at your pom.xml for students, you'll see that the description is a simple student project to help you get started with Java. And sure enough, that's generated here in this site by Maven. And you can do all sorts of stuff like, no, maybe that will work. No, it won't. You can find out things. It's all generated sort of automatically for you based on how you've configured things. So you can find things like, oh, hey, source code management. And so it'll tell you, oh, yeah, here's how you can get the source code. Oh, that link's not right. I need to fix that, but whatever. But probably more interesting, I have I have information about the project organization. Yeah, right. So it's part of Portland State University. Oh yeah, and then this should probably be my name or something like that. But let's look at the interesting things, which are the reports. So out of the box, you can get it. Okay, here's a report about your code coverage, Jacoco. And you can drill down into it. Wow, I wish it would retain the size. And now you can see, oh yeah, look, it only got 72%, which was sufficient for the 60. But it looks like, main and print error message did not have any code coverage. So, your integration tests aren't going to count towards your 60%. I wonder what that's going to mean. Okay, that's interesting. Cool, but look, we got 100% code coverage on all these, on the toString method and all this other stuff because it's pretty straightforward. But this is what your unit tests give you, is all that code coverage. So you can get information about your code coverage from that report. You can also get your Java docs. So this is pretty simple, but here's the student class. And it looks at the source code and from it generates this Java doc. So okay, your class student extends human, and human is actually, I'm going to open this up in a new tab. Human is my class. It links off to my docs on my website. So it's smart enough to know all of this. Similarly, you go look at, what's this Java Lang object thing about? It links off to Oracle's Java docs. Right? So the whole idea here is that Javadoc is smart enough to know where all these things reside, or actually you tell it where all these things reside, and it weaves everything together so that you've got, for any Maven project, all you have to do is do a little bit of configuration and you get a lot of value out of the Javadocs. And notice, let's see here, oh, this is human, back to student here. This class represents a student. This comes right out of our student class, right? This class represents a student. Note you can use things like the code tag, and so that puts it in a fixed with font here. And what do Javadocs do? You've probably been looking at this stuff before, but you can get information about your constructor. Here's your constructor. Here's all the information about your constructor, all those parameters and stuff. So name, student name, again, that comes right from your source code. So this @param tag right here is interpreted by the Javadoc tool and is turned into this documentation right here. Oh, look, it throws in legal argument exception. What's the legal argument exception? You click on it, it brings you off to Oracle's javadocs for legal argument exception. So, here again, the idea here is that you're using standards like javadoc, you're using conventions put forth by Maven, and you can, with one command, poof, you get all this information, all these reports about your projects. And it tells you information and lets you then, well, actually, maybe I should just go ahead and do that. I have, if you go and look at like my human class again, human has been published to a github.io address, which you probably can't see very well here. And the way you do that is the following. I think I'll get this right. You need to create a branch. If I create a branch, so github-gh-pages. This is a standard in GitHub, and any code that gets published to this branch will then get turned into one of those github.io URLs. Okay. It's kind of a neat thing. And let's see here. And I think I've got it configured. So if I say Maven site deploy, and actually I probably want the top level one. I want Maven site, Maven clean site. Let me just do it for the whole repository. It's generating javadoc for like all sorts of things, including like one big javadoc for all of my projects, which actually I'll show you that first. Oh, and there were other things in there that I didn't talk about. Also, other reports in terms of, there's this thing called spot bugs, which analyzes your code and looks for just like bad practices, or it's like, oh look, you're likely to get a null pointer exception here. Oh look, you're calling a deprecated API, and actually it's got all sorts of really neat analyses that have been built up over the years in it. Gets you pretty versions of your source code so that you can look at it more easily, or you can publish it on your website. It gets you reports about what tests passed and failed. And so then, here again, the whole idea is that because Maven provides these standards and this infrastructure, if I write some new code analysis tool, I can provide a Maven plugin for my tool, and poof, it all works. I don't think it's blowing up on some things. No module descriptor. I don't know what that means. We'll see if this works. Seems to be making quite a lot of progress, using quite a lot of CPU. Running some code coverage. It's making. Oh, it gives you information about like your code dependencies. Like, I'm using this library. It can tell you things like there's a newer version of that library. Maybe you should upgrade. All sorts of cool stuff like that. Okay, so that's the Maven site. And now you can say Maven site deploy, and this ought to publish it off to GitHub. We'll see if that works. While this is going, any questions about what we've seen in the last little bit in terms of integration testing or testing the command line or javadocs? Yeah.
So one of the problems that's not applied to one is if you don't have any testing class on it, and so because it wasn't including the integration tests, I was trying to test it without it.
Okay, sorry. And the code coverage was failing because you had it in test. Yeah. So maybe what that means is that you should be minimizing the amount of code that's required in your main. that you should try to put as much code into the what did it fail with? Null pointer exception. That's weird. I wonder how far it got. Maybe you should try to make as much of your code testable by unit tests and minimize the amount of code that's tested by integration tests.
So would you want in like the project one class then public methods that would be testable with unit tests?
Or package protected methods. Yeah. So if you've got
That's what I ended up doing.
Yep.
It just seemed odd to have these things as public methods.
well, they don't need to be public because your unit test, your actually both your project, both like your flight test and your project one test are in the same package. They don't have to be public methods. They can be package private methods. So basically, no modifier. The default modifier is accessible in the same package. But yes, and that's valid, right? And so then, because in general, because integration tests are require more setup and usually run slower, you want to minimize it. So and that's why we had all the happy path stuff, all the really except for what validation did we do? We did we did GPA validation because that's actual logic that's in the main. But even the gender validation wasn't in the main. Did we ever write a failing test for gender? I think the only thing that failed is that we didn't know what the error message would be. So we didn't change the code under test in order to get the test to pass. So really, we didn't need to write that test, I guess. But it was informative. So yeah, right. This is like the things that you think about when you're doing test-driven development. It's a different way to approach it. But my experience has been that you get higher quality results faster, and you actually write less code. Which for some people that's not fun, right? It's like, look at this 100,000 lines of code. It's like I did it in a lot less, and it's not as tricky, right? Yeah. Anyway. I don't know how far this got. I don't know why it blew up. It got some internal null pointer exception or something, which maybe has something to do with the way. Oh, interesting. Okay. So maybe this won't work after all. So let's see what we got. Let's go back here and see if we've got anything in the Portland State Java Winter 2020 repository. It's just got the README. Site? No. API docs? Nope. I don't know what it's got. Actually, did anything get published to GitHub pages? Nope, nothing got published, so that's weird. Okay, well, I'll go play with this. If I can get it to work, I'll show it to you next week. Because it is getting late. Okay. Well, so then, that's what we've got for tonight. Honestly, I wanted to show you integration tests, do some more TDD. Looking at the class for next week, it's week 3. Great. Next week is when we start doing pair programming. So recall that, and we'll go into more detail about this next week. We will be spending, so basically, this time that you're watching me code, well, next week you'll be doing code with somebody else, and so then we'll be approaching this kata next week, and there's pair programming next week, January 29th. Then we're off on the 5th, and then also on February 12th. And you are required to come to one of those sessions. I encourage you to attend all of them. I think you'll learn something each time. But we're all grown-ups, can decide what we do with our times, and assuming that I can still create the screencasts, everything should be captured. So, but yeah, please come next week, get some experience pair programming, and we'll see how that goes. All right. Great. Anything else for tonight? Thank you very much for your time this evening. Have a great week. Make sure to run the survey program so I can send you the invitation to the Slack channel. And we'll catch up on Slack and on email between then. See you later.